I never thought that, after retiring, I would have to deal with a bunch of arrogant petty tyrants. People who believed they had the right to control every tiny aspect of the residents' lives. But if you've ever lived in an HOA-governed neighborhood, you already know this feeling. My name is Mark Reynolds, a retired Air Force colonel who served over 30 years in the military, flying through some of the most dangerous combat zones in the world. I've faced real enemies, the kind that could take my life in the blink of an eye. But I never imagined that, upon retirement, I'd have to fight against a bunch of weaklings with delusions of power, the Brookdale Estates HOA board. After leaving the military, I wanted a peaceful life. I spent my days growing organic herbs in my backyard, rosemary, lavender, mint, and selling them online. My customers were all over the country, and I shipped my products through UPS, FedEx, and USPS. Everything I did was perfectly legal. I didn't have walk-in customers, I didn't have advertisements, I didn't disturb anyone. But that was a problem for HOA. Linda Marsh, the HOA president, was a power-hungry control freak. She ran the neighborhood like her personal kingdom, deciding everything from the color of people's doors to what kind of grass they were allowed to plant. And when she found out I had a small business, she lost her mind. I had always thought that HOA was just a group of harmless busybodies, people with nothing better to do than gossip about whose fence was painted the wrong shade or who forgot to mow their lawn for a week. But I was wrong. They weren't just about control, they were obsessed with power. And this time, they messed with the wrong guy. It all started with a warning letter from HOA, printed on fancy letterhead as if it were some kind of Supreme Court ruling, but the content was so ridiculous that I couldn't help but laugh. The frequent entry of commercial vehicles into the neighborhood is disrupting the community and affecting residents' quality of life. If this continues, you will be fined $500 per delivery. I laughed out loud. How ridiculous. UPS and FedEx delivered packages to every single house in this neighborhood every day. But suddenly, when they came to my house, it was considered a disruption? I stared at the letter for a few seconds, and threw it straight into the trash. Not even worth my time. I went back to my business as usual. But the HOA didn't stop. 3 days after I ignored their letter, I got a call from my usual UPS driver. "Hey Mark, what's up with the security guard at the gate? He's not letting me in." I froze. I walked outside, got into my truck, and drove straight to the neighborhood's front entrance, where HOA had suddenly installed a new security checkpoint that had never existed before. Standing there was a cheap-looking security guard, wearing an oversized pair of sunglasses and a uniform that looked like it belonged in a discount store, arms crossed like he was guarding Fort Knox. "What the hell is this?" I asked. The guy didn't even pretend to be surprised. He had been waiting for me, itching to flex his non-existent power. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds. The HOA has decided that this community requires enhanced security. From now on, all commercial vehicles must have a special permit to enter." I smirked. "A permit? And who issues those permits?" "The HOA, of course." I turned to the frustrated UPS driver, who was standing there holding a package for me. "So if I want to receive my packages, what do I need to do?" The guard shrugged. "You'll need to go to the HOA office, fill out a permit request, and wait for approval. Processing takes about 5 to 10 days. 10 days. I let out a low chuckle. They really thought this bureaucratic bullshit would work on me? I walked over to the UPS driver, took my package right in front of the guard, and looked him straight in the eye. "I got my package. Thanks." Then I leaned in slightly and said, "Don't ever block my deliveries again." I knew he had no legal authority to stop me. But I also knew he was just a pawn. The real villain? Linda Marsh. And she wasn't done yet. 2 weeks after I ignored the checkpoint stunt, I started having issues with my shipments. Some of my supply orders were mysteriously returned. FedEx and USPS drivers reported issues trying to drop off packages. Customers contacted me saying they hadn't received their orders. Something wasn't right. I called FedEx customer service. After waiting 30 minutes, I finally spoke to an agent. And when she explained what was happening, I nearly exploded. We received a notice from the Brookdale Estates HOA stating that your address is not authorized to receive commercial shipments. I froze. Excuse me. What? According to our records, the HOA informed us 3 weeks ago that your address was restricted from receiving business-related deliveries. They have no authority to do that. I understand, sir. If you can provide documentation proving otherwise, we can lift the restriction. I hung up. I recorded the entire call. I now had undeniable proof that the HOA had illegally interfered with my business. This was no longer just a petty dispute. This was war. A few days later, I noticed my neighbors acting weird. People whispered behind my back. Some avoided eye contact altogether. Then I found a flyer distributed by the HOA all over the neighborhood. The contents made my blood boil. Warning: a resident is turning Brookdale Estates into an unauthorized commercial hub. This illegal operation is reducing our property values and jeopardizing our safety. If you don't want commercial trucks flooding our streets, demand that the HOA take action now. They didn't mention me by name, but we all knew who they were talking about. They weren't just messing with my business anymore. They were trying to destroy my reputation. I could tolerate them trying to make my life difficult. But attacking my name? Attacking the people I've lived alongside for years? That was unforgivable. That was the last straw. I was done waiting. Fire HOA wanted a war? Then they would get one. Fire. And I would make them regret ever crossing me. I spent 30 years in the military, learning how to be patient, observe, and wait for the enemy to make a mistake before delivering a decisive blow. And now, I wasn't just applying those skills to a battlefield. I was using them against the corrupt HOA. They thought they could bully me into submission. They thought I would slam my fists on the table, yell, and give them a reason to find me even more. But they made a fatal mistake. Because I don't play by their rules, I play by mine. And in this game, I would win. The first thing I did wasn't fight back, it was watch. I secretly installed additional security cameras around my property and, most importantly, at the neighborhood entrance, where HOA had set up their ridiculous checkpoint. What I recorded was absolutely shocking. White heavy checkmark UPS drivers were being denied entry without valid reasons. White heavy checkmark HOA security guards refused to let FedEx trucks in, even when drivers explained it was just a standard delivery. White heavy checkmark a guard even went through one of my packages, taking pictures like he had any authority to do so. All of it was captured, in full HD, by my cameras. And that was just the beginning. After confirming HOA was interfering with my deliveries, I called FedEx and UPS directly. The first call with FedEx. Telephone receiver: "Good morning, this is Mark Reynolds. I'm having issues with my shipments. Many of my packages are being returned for no reason. Can you tell me why?" Telephone receiver: "Let me check, sir." Pause. Oh. According to our system, your address has been flagged by Brookdale Estates HOA as not authorized to receive commercial shipments. Telephone receiver: "What?" Telephone receiver: "Yes, sir. HOA sent us this notice 3 weeks ago. Our system requires us to comply with their rules." Telephone receiver: "They don't have that authority." Telephone receiver: "I understand, sir. If you can provide documentation proving otherwise, we can remove the restriction." Telephone receiver: "Oh, don't worry, I'll provide documentation. And HOA will regret doing this." I recorded the entire conversation. Now, I had undeniable proof that HOA illegally interfered with my ability to conduct business. After gathering video and audio evidence, I started talking to my neighbors. And you know what I discovered? I wasn't the only victim of HOA's power trip. Crossmark: the Anderson family was fined $1,000 because their child drew with chalk on the sidewalk. HOA claimed it ruined the neighborhood aesthetic. Crossmark: Jessica, a schoolteacher, was warned because she hung a small welcome sign on her door. HOA called it unauthorized advertising. Crossmark: Mr. Peterson, a fellow veteran, was forced to take down his American flag because HOA said it didn't match the community standard. I gathered all of them together. How badly has HOA bullied you? Their responses were all the same. We didn't know what to do. But I did. I collected written statements from them, recording their personal stories of HOA abuse. The anger in our community was boiling over, and I would be the one to ignite the rebellion. Once I had proof of HOA's delivery interference and abuse of power, I targeted the biggest weakness of any corrupt organization: money. I demanded HOA publicly disclose their financial records, as required by state law. Linda Marsh, the HOA dictator, fought back immediately. You don't have the right to request this. Oh, but I do, I replied, holding up a printed copy of state law. And if you refuse, I'll take HOA to court immediately. 3 days later, I received a full copy of HOA's financial statements. And it was a disaster. Moneybag $20,000 transferred from HOA funds into Linda Marsh's personal bank account. Moneybag $15,000 paid to a legal services firm, with no actual invoices attached. Moneybag $10,000 spent on landscaping services, but the company didn't exist. I had found their Achilles heel, and I was going to use it to destroy them. After months of enduring their abuse and gathering evidence, I had everything I needed to annihilate HOA from the inside out. White heavy checkmark video evidence of HOA illegally blocking deliveries. White heavy checkmark recorded phone calls proving HOA lied to FedEx to restrict my address. White heavy checkmark written statements from neighbors, proving HOA harassed residents with ridiculous fines. White heavy checkmark financial records, proving Linda Marsh embezzled HOA funds. I didn't need guns or fists to win this battle. I just needed to present this evidence to the government, lawyers, and the public. And once I did, Linda Marsh and her little empire would crumble like a rotting house of cards. I took a deep breath, sipped my coffee, and prepared for the final battle. Backhand index pointing right. HOA wanted war? I would give them a war they would never forget. For 3 long months, I watched, documented, and collected evidence while HOA, under Linda Marsh's corrupt rule, abused its power, manipulated the community, and openly targeted my business. They thought I would give up. They thought I would lose my temper and give them an excuse to punish me further. Instead, I waited patiently, until I could strike with a single, devastating blow. And now, it was time to deliver it. My first move was going straight to the legal system, because no one, not even a corrupt HOA, is above the law. I submitted an official complaint to the City Department of Business and Transportation. My case was airtight. White heavy checkmark video evidence from my security cameras, proving HOA blocked deliveries and harassed drivers. White heavy checkmark recorded phone calls with FedEx, proving HOA lied to ban shipments to my address. White heavy checkmark written statements from neighbors, proving HOA had been abusing its power for years. White heavy checkmark financial records, proving Linda Marsh embezzled tens of thousands of dollars from HOA funds. The city officials were immediately interested, because HOAs had been a constant source of complaints for them. And, just as I expected, they launched an official investigation. I didn't just want HOA to be investigated, I wanted them publicly humiliated. So, I sent all my evidence to a local journalist. 2 days later, the article hit the news, with the headline, "Retired Air Force Colonel's Business Targeted by HOA, Unlawful Restrictions Exposed." And the fallout was glorious. Collision. The article went viral in the community. Collision residents started questioning the HOA's leadership. Collision. More victims came forward, sharing their stories. HOA was collapsing from the inside out. There are moments in life when you experience absolute satisfaction, when you watch an enemy crumble before your eyes, knowing they will never recover. This was that moment. After months of battling against HOA's corruption, after they tried to sabotage my business, manipulate my neighbors, and abuse their power, I had finally pushed them to the edge of destruction. And now, I stood on the battlefield of their downfall, watching as Linda Marsh's little empire collapsed into ruin while she scrambled for an escape. After I filed a class action lawsuit with over 20 residents, and after the city launched its formal investigation, HOA was cornered with nowhere to run. Police car light. The HOA's bank account was frozen. They no longer had access to funds to pay for legal fees or their fake security guards. Police car light their financial records were exposed, proving that Linda had embezzled over $50,000 in undocumented expenses. Police car light, the city issued an official sanction, demanding that HOA reimburse all unlawfully collected fees within 30 days. HOA had lost. But the best part? They didn't even realize how badly they had lost, until I showed them. When things started falling apart, Linda called for an emergency HOA meeting, an act of sheer desperation to regain control. I knew this would be the perfect moment to deal the final blow. The HOA meeting room was packed. The entire neighborhood had shown up. People were furious. Residents who had been fined for nonsense rules were here. Families who lost money to HOA's shady fees were here. And, of course, I was here, ready to finish what I started. Linda stood at the front, visibly shaken, but still trying to fake confidence. I know there have been misunderstandings, but I assure you that we can resolve this. I only want what's best for our community. The room fell silent for a moment. Then, an elderly man, Mr. Peterson, the veteran who was forced to remove his American flag, stood up and spoke. Resolve this. You stole our money, you blocked deliveries, and now you're pretending this is just a misunderstanding. The room erupted in anger. I stood up, calmly walked to the front, and slammed a thick folder of documents onto the table. All right, Linda. If this is just a misunderstanding, then explain these transactions. I flipped through the documents, reading out loud. Moneybag $20,000 transferred from HOA funds to Linda Marsh's personal bank account. Moneybag $15,000 paid to a legal services firm, with no invoices or receipts. $10,000 for landscaping services, to a company that doesn't exist. Linda's face turned pale. This is all community management expenses. You can't just... I cut her off immediately. Really? Because I sent all of this to the state auditor's office. Silence. Then, one by one, residents started shouting. Where's our money, Linda? You lied to us. We want our HOA fees refunded. Linda started panicking. She stammered, looked around, desperately seeking support, but she found none. Even the other HOA board members were avoiding eye contact, distancing themselves from her. She was alone. And that's when I delivered the final strike. Linda, I have one last message from the city government. I held up an official letter with the city's seal on it. The city of Brookdale has officially dissolved the Brookdale Estates HOA. The entire room exploded in cheers. HOA was dead. Linda stood frozen, knowing her reign was over. She grabbed her purse, trying to make a quick exit, but residents blocked her way. You can't just leave without answering. Where's our money? Her face was red with embarrassment. Her hands were shaking. She shoved through the crowd, practically sprinting to the parking lot. She jumped into her car, slammed the door, and sped off like a criminal escaping the scene of a crime. And, in reality, she was a criminal. Because 1 week later, Linda Marsh was officially charged with embezzling HOA funds. The neighborhood celebrated like they had just been liberated from a dictatorship. 1 month after HOA was dissolved, the entire neighborhood changed. Rocket no more bogus fines. Rocket no more absurd regulations. Rocket people could finally live peacefully in their own homes. And the best part? I could receive deliveries from FedEx and UPS without anyone trying to stop me. I stood outside my house, sipping my coffee, watching as a FedEx truck pulled into my driveway without interference, and smirked in satisfaction. Fire I had won. Fire justice had been served. Fire and Linda Marsh, the woman who thought she could control everyone, had been erased from this neighborhood forever. If there's one thing any corrupt HOA should take away from this, it's this. Backhand index pointing right, never go up against someone who's spent their entire career in tactical warfare. Backhand index pointing right, because if I go into battle, I won't just defeat you, I will crush you beyond recovery. Collision fire.